Hello, my name's Stuart Magoo and this is an advice video. We're going to have a quick look today at universal credit and some of the things that you need to consider before making an application and how to go about starting off the application process. I'm making this video as obviously we are going through the coronavirus crisis in this country, as many people are all over the world at the moment. And so there are going to be high numbers of people applying for universal credit for the first time. So this is basically some pointers on what to consider before you start the process, and also how to actually get that process started. So universal credit is, generally speaking, applied for using the online portal at gov.uk. Now, for most people, we should be able to access the internet and be able to begin that process. But for quite a few people, they don't have that access available to them. So if a person isn't able to do that themselves, either because they don't have access or because they require support to access it, going to, say, your local library, for example, to use their computers, that's not going to be an option. And equally, services like the Citizens Advice Bureau and things like that aren't going to be able to provide the support that they normally would to people in those situations. If that applies to you or somebody you know, then it would be advisable to get in touch with your local authority. Many local authorities are setting up volunteer support services to help people. Generally speaking, it's intended that would be to support people with getting shopping if they are on isolation or vulnerable, so that they would be at risk if they were to go out. But it may be that through that service somebody is able to offer support in terms of accessing the internet, so it's worth making that inquiry. If you are in a vulnerable group, such as over the age of 60, or if you have pre-existing long-term conditions, then it may be worth trying to access services through, for example, Age UK, or a third sector or charity organisation that represents people that have the long-term health condition that you do. So, for example, most local authorities will have a charity organisation that helps people with advocacy if they have mental health problems or mental capacity issues. Most Age UKs do offer a form filling service for people over the age of 60, and it may be that they've come up with provisions for looking at different ways on how to do that. So it's worth checking around and looking around. Equally, the Citizens Advice Bureau in your area, although they may not be able to help directly, they may be able to advise or support you in finding the help that you need. So if we assume from this point on that you have internet access and that you are able to access gov.uk to begin your universal credit application, there's a few things that you'll need to consider and make sure that you've got prepared before you begin that process. The application process, or rather the internet web page that you'll use to begin that process, is very simple to operate, and it's also quite self-explanatory. It's very clear as you work through it as to what's required. The main point is to always make sure you read everything that's on the page in front of you. Generally speaking, the language that's used on this website is fairly simple and not too jargon heavy, but there may be things that catch you by surprise. So always read through it carefully and look out for the little links that will guide you to more information on the particular question that they're asking you. So when you begin your application, you will need some things in advance of doing so. The first thing is your national insurance number. You will also need information about your bank accounts, particularly the one that you want the money to be paid into. You will also need information about your current employment status. So, beginning the process is pretty simple. Click Start Now, which is a big green button, and that will then start asking you simple questions about when you want the claim to go from, and your name, address, your email address. You will need an email address, and also your contact details for your mobile phone as well as your landline and so on. You will be asked to put in your bank details. This isn't so that they can have a look at your bank account or what's in there. This is just simply so that they can make a payment to you in the future. You'll then also be asked what your current sort of employment status is. If you are unemployed, then Universal Credit will aim to put you onto the job search program, and that will have some commitments required with it in terms of what you will need to do. We'll come back to this shortly. If you are unwell or too unwell to work for whatever reason, you can apply for the employment support allowance element of Universal Credit, but you will need a fit note from your doctor. These used to be called sick notes, but they are referred to as fit notes through the Universal Credit website. This will obviously contain information about when you are sort of deemed fit to work again, and as I say, you will need to get the information with the fit note to them. If you are self-employed, you again will need to enter details of that information into the system at this point as well. So what ordinarily happens after that is an account will be created for you. This will be your Universal Credit account, and it will set up a page where you log in. You'll be asked to give some information to make this login more secure, and that will include some memorable information. You will decide what that is yourself. So when you log in future, you will have a two-step verification process where they ask you for your username and password, but then after that they will also ask you for your memorable information as well. In order to activate your account, you will be sent an email, and that will have an activation link in it, which you'll need to click on to follow that through, which is fairly simple to do. If you can't find that email, make sure that you check in the junk email folder. If you use Outlook, for example, or used to be called Hotmail, then you'll probably find that new organisations that come to you will get sort of moved into your junk folder before anywhere else. So it's worth checking in there if you don't see an email come through. Once your account is activated and you log in for the first time, you'll be taken through to a home page which will have a number of actions that it requires you to complete. So these actions will either be will include identifying yourself with relevant ID documents, and also updating them with information regarding your employment status. So that might be submitting the fit note, or it might be what's commitment that you need to make, and so on and so forth. Ordinarily, when you've done these things, you will be assigned a face-to-face interview with a job coach or a work coach, and you'll be assigned a work coach even if you're not actually going to be looking at working. So don't be put off by that when you see it saying your work coach is John. You need to speak to John. Now, you can use the website to communicate directly with your work coach, and equally they will send you messages to this website as well. If you have an email address, then you will, which you will do at this point, if you have an email address linked to your mobile phone or something like that, then you will get notifications when they send you messages. If you don't, it's very important that you check on your Universal Credit account on an almost daily basis, not twice a day in some cases, because they may send you messages, and it is very important that you see those messages and respond to them as quickly as possible. In the messages, they will always instruct you what it is that they need or want you to do. So, the first thing that you'll have to do is identify yourself using ID documents. Now, generally speaking, the best ID documents to use is either your driving license or your passport. Passport is generally the best one. And also you may need to provide proof of address and so on. Now, the tricky part is that you will be asked to do this through a third-party organisation. There will be 3 options, usually, or possibly 4, of organisations that will be able to process your ID documents and verify that they are correct. When I went through this process, the top of the list was the post office, and then following down from that was Experian, and then a couple of organisations that I didn't recognise. To start with, I downloaded the post office app, which you would need to download to your smartphone. This app will then instruct you step by step on how to scan the documents using the camera on your phone. And you can follow this through step by step. Now, some people have found that doing this doesn't provide the results that they wanted. Sometimes the app doesn't recognise the documents you're scanning, or it can't actually verify you are who you are. Don't panic at this point. You can stop this process and go back to where you were before and use one of the other options on the list. Now, I ran into this issue with the post office app. It wouldn't recognise my documents, so I went back and I did it through Experian. I found the Experian system a little more easy to navigate, and they verified me from my passport information alone without me having to do any further scanning or anything like that. So it is worth trying different options on there before raising an issue with the Universal Credit sort of people. The easiest way of raising an issue, if you have got one, is to send them a message through the messaging centre on the Universal Credit website. If they need to speak to you by phone, they will give you a free phone number to call, and will give you a window as to what time is best for you to call them. Sometimes it's quite a large window, like between 8 and 8 p.m. Sometimes it's quite a short window, so do check in particular. Again, it may be that they're experiencing very high volume of calls at the moment, which they usually do, but obviously things are a bit different at the minute, so that might be worse. So if you are going to make a phone call to them, always send a message to them as well, telling them that you are trying to make a phone call to them and what the nature of your call is. Okay, and even record the time that you are making the call or have made the call, so that they're aware of it. The more you communicate, the better, really. And the more you record every type of communication that you do through your Universal Credit account, the better as well. Once you've been verified and all that set up, you will then, as I say, have to either submit information about your earnings, if there are any, and also further information about your current circumstances. So it may be that you have dependents, children for example. It may be that you require housing benefit or council tax support, or all of those kind of things. You may be asked to submit information or documentation to do that. Most documentation can be obtained. For example, with bank accounts, you will be able to set up an online banking account where you're able to download statements to your computer, which you can then forward through to them if required. And that's just an example. It may be that you can get further information about yourself in a format like that you can forward to them. Equally, if you have access to a scanner, you can also scan documents to send to them as well if it's required. But do check with them before you send anything off, because it may be that they want you to send things to a postal address. This is usually the case with a fit note. More often than not, they have to be submitted to your local job centre or benefit centre. So be very careful. If you send any fit notes, make sure you send the original documents, but take a copy first. And if you can, send them recorded delivery so that you know that they have been delivered and that there's no mistakes with that. Now, some quick notes on self-employment. Self-employment, if you are starting a new business, then they will look at assessing as to whether you're gainfully self-employed or not. If you're gainfully self-employed and you earn a regular, reasonable wage through that, then you will not have to go through the work or job search commitments with them. You will simply have to continue doing as you are doing. If they should decide that you're not gainfully self-employed, as in you're not earning enough or you're not doing enough hours, then they will put you onto the job search commitments as you would if you were considering yourself unemployed. This also may apply to people that are on 0-hour contracts as well, particularly if they, as part of their 0-hour contract, have had to declare themselves as self-employed. As I say, if you're gainfully self-employed, then you won't have to do weekly updates about what jobs you've been looking for and your work search, but equally you may have to give them updates about what your earnings are, and that may affect the amount of universal credit you're paid month to month, sort of thing. If they decide you are due a startup, so you're sort of being self-employed for the first time and it's a new business, then they will look at creating a startup period for you, which lasts 12 months, and this means that the minimum income floor does not apply. If they decide you have been self-employed for a while or your business is not brand new, then you will have the minimum income floor applied to you. Just to quickly go over what that is, basically this decides how much they believe you should be earning in your self-employment, and it will calculate that as an assumed amount that you are receiving. So even if your money drops below that from self-employment, your earnings drop below that, they will still calculate it based on that. So if your minimum income floor is £120 a week and you've only earned £90 that month, even though your earnings are less, they will still calculate it based on that minimum income floor. And so your monthly payment will be reduced by the calculation based on £120, not the 90 that you actually earned. This is very important to bear in mind because the minimum income floor has caught people out before. So that's a quick overview of the universal credit system. Good luck with applying for it. It can be very difficult. If you have any questions, do feel free to drop them in the comments below. It can help others. Thanks for watching.